we will be moving on to our second last speaker of the day, and Dr. M Jantjies. You can welcome her. Please give her a hand. She's a senior lecturer. A senior lecturer in information systems with a research focus on educational technology. And her presentation title is Technology as an Enabler, Using Emerging Technologies in My Lectures. So I hand over to Dr. Jantjies.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Like any great academic, you prepare a presentation and you feel hours before it wasn't enough. You go back to that presentation to update it, but unfortunately the people have your old one. So spare a minute for me as I enter my Google Drive. I'm going to share any one specific technology experience that I have, but I'm going to share with you my experimenting and exploration of using technology in my teaching approaches. And those of you who, like me, love being on Twitter, you can follow me, that's my handle. And I'm not quite sure if I'm a millennial as well. Let me class myself as a millennial. My research area is in education technology, and therefore I spend a lot of time either developing or exploring how we can make education fun through the development of different software and using different hardware to support teaching and learning. I'm not going to get into the detail of this, but essentially the reason why I put this slide here was to say that the importance of colloquiums such as this is to understand how when we embed technology into our teaching and learning, we essentially embed an important skill that our students are going to need in the fourth industrial revolution. No matter how basic it may seem to you and me, when they get to the workplace environment, that basic tool, that basic skill that we embedded within the classroom becomes essential in the day and age that we live in. But what does that even look like for me as a teacher? So one of the things that I do as part of community engagement is to run teacher workshops on how they can embed teaching within class. And I tend to say, in a take-home-meter, you need to gauge yourself. So you start off with a huge sense of fear of, if I press it, will it break? And I tend to say only experts can really, really break it. Non-experts can never break it because you can't get to that level. And so introducing technology within teaching and learning can start with something so basic as a WhatsApp group. And embedding that somehow, some way, is either a form of communication or a form of teaching and learning within your classroom context. Can then move on to advanced use of slides within your classroom. Moving on to the advanced use of learning management systems. And I think we have such great support on campus on how essentially to use eColloquium. And once you're an expert, hey, why not introduce a robot into your class to help you? And so there's a whole world on the internet of academics like you and me who are trying to find ways of how to enhance teaching and learning by actually embedding technology. So from open educational resources to using social media to support teaching and learning. I'll give you a simple, small example. On Twitter, we have what we call hashtags. Now, hashtags help us to be able to track a particular topic. We have a technology called IBM Watson, where we can take just one hashtag. Say, for example, I wanted my students to write an assignment about the perspective of young students during Fees Must Fall. Just using the hashtag of Fees Must Fall, they can retrieve all tweets that were tweeted by students like them across the country and be able to write something about the perspectives of young students during Fees Must Fall. And so the power of the existing resources can help us achieve what we want to achieve. We just need to know what we're using and how we want to use it. But essentially, I always say you need to know your students. Our students come from different backgrounds. Some may not have the resources that we think that they have. And how do I I mitigate as an academic to make sure that I can support them? So first things first, I always make sure I know what type of resources do my students have access to. So I'm not going to prescribe a certain type of technology that I know is going to add challenges to them. Teaching philosophies. Anything that we do with technology is also led by the philosophies. So I hope there's no one from education faculty here, because the moment I start speaking about teaching philosophies, I think, oh, the experts are in the room, and tell me that's not the model, that's not how it's described. But nonetheless, there are many teaching philosophies that guide us on how to embed technology within our classrooms. So essentially, when I plan for my classes, I need to know what I'm teaching in terms of content, what platform would be best, how to teach it, but most importantly, what type of students am I teaching? Do they have access to data? Data is such a pertinent challenge within our younger society. Do they stay on campus? Will they be able to finish their assignment with my requirements in the time that I've actually given them? And so I do a lot of exploring, a lot of experimentation. Sometimes it doesn't work very well, and the feedback comes from my students to say, hey, the platform that you had described was actually difficult to use, or these were the challenges. Most of the time, it's social issues. Oh, so-and-so didn't put it there part. Oh, so-and-so was never available. And one thing that I learned in my journey of education technology is the ability to ask, the ability to walk over to people who are actually using a certain technology and ask for help whenever it is that I need assistance. So I quickly going to rush through the VARC model, which says that essentially learners are visual, learners like oral support, reading and writing, and experiential learning. And so many a times we tend to stick to the one component of their strengths. And so I try to take basic technologies and see how I map out in the different strengths of our students to actually support them. So the first thing that I do for my students is my course outline. So I set the tone from the onset, and they know that from the beginning, this is the type of material that we will be using. We try to be as paperless as possible, and therefore the communication happens with Google Drive. And therefore, if they're going to have an assignment, they need to also work on it together on Google Drive and share that assignment with me on Google Drive. Because when they get to the workplace environment, that's how they're actually going to work. Not going to be moving around with papers. Another thing that I do is also use different tools for assessments. There's a really great tool called Socrative. I think it's much similar to the one that she just described to you now. Socrative is an online polling or assessment tool that you can use. I've actually set up a little quiz for everybody who's in this room, and if you have time, you can go over to www.socrative.com, go to the student login, and when it wants the room details, give it this room. The great thing about Socrative is that sometimes we'll have a quiz during class, and Socrative allows me to show the student the answers as they come up. So I ask them to either take out their mobile phones or answer the questions on their desktop. And as they're answering, especially with groups, the answers start coming up, and we can immediately discuss the responses as they come up. It's also got a space race, which is somewhat like a competition that we sometimes have within classes on who can be able to come up with a solution to this problem quickly, as quick as possible. So one thing that I was trying to pull out from my Google Drive was another form of technology. Please excuse me a bit. So as I said, the VOG model really guides me in a lot that I do. And in understanding that students' experiential learning needs to be experiential, I make sure that I embed the technology within the experiential learning component. One of the assessments that I recently gave them was to identify challenges which really challenged students and staff on campus and come up with a solution. So the course that I teach is Project Management for Information Systems. And the manner in which they handle the project needs to embed all the teaching philosophies that I gave them. And so one of the student groups designed a carpooling system because they figured and they found from student research on campus that parking was a huge problem. And so they had to interview, capture all the responses through Google Forms, and in the end actually design a prototype for a lift club. And that being said, we called different stakeholders to come and assess the assessments of the students. This is the joys of technology. Today it's getting really slow to actually open up the material. This was another assignment that they gave me, and in returning the assessment, the request was that I did not want a stack of papers or a bound project. They had to bring the assessment in the form of a video. And therefore the students sat down to actually put a video together using their mobile phones, giving me feedback as I would have wanted in a stack or a bound assignment. Unfortunately, my technology is quite slow.
The project we have chosen is the Untitled scheme.
Okay.
As we continue to watch and listen, we will convey why we bring you here.
So this was a video that they made with a tool called Power Tools. And in my class, I don't teach my students how to use Power Tools. However, if a student comes to me and say, we're trying to learn this platform, can you help us figure out how to use it to be able to create a video for you? Then I would definitely support it. And besides that, there are many e-skills programs that are run on campus that support students to be able to do this. So in the assessments, I also ask students to actually submit assessments in digital forms because we don't do paper. Consultation, I also do my consultation online. So if I'm not in the office, that does not mean that we cannot consult. I also teach on a master's program. It's an IT security for health professionals, and the program is run across 3 countries. And therefore, it means that many of my students on this program will never be able to consult in my office. There's a great platform apart from Skype, which is called Zoom. It has a free 45-minute login. It's quite stable, and we run quite a lot of our revision sessions on this platform. Zoom allows for communication which is text-based, and it also allows for video communication. But if my network doesn't work really well, we turn off our screens, and it's just audio communication between students from the 3 different countries. So it's Tanzania, it's Germany, and the other students are also South African. But I make this service also available for my students. So my students know that they can email me, and on such and such a date, at such and such a time, we will be online having a discussion about whatever challenge it is that they actually face. So making yourself also available, not just being bound in by the office, but also being available online beside WhatsApp, which sometimes WhatsApp can be a bit intrusive in your personal space. Being able to set up a time that students know that they can communicate with you online. Introducing a concept. Lately, I have been exploring what is called virtual reality. Virtual reality is the use of immersive technologies. So immersive technologies means being able to take, for example, your phone Let me go up. Being able to take either your mobile phone or VR cases, as it may, and being able to simulate real learning environments for students using that technology. So in essence, I can take a student to a doctor consultation without them actually ever walking into doctor consultation. Immersive technologies are available also through our mobile phone. When you go to the App Store, you need to know what it is that you're looking for, and you can actually download that technology for your students to be able to access. So with immersive technology, we use different gaming approaches that enable students to be immersed in a particular topic that we need them to learn. And so this is one of the games. I thought I was going to be able to play it for you on YouTube, but unfortunately with the internet I can only but show you in this way. This is one of the games that we use to introduce the students to a particular topic within our project management module, where they can actually be immersed in that particular area without having to be either in a mall or in a specific project that is taking place outside of the university location. And the great thing about the casing is that it's quite cheaply available. So sometimes I acquire such casings for myself so that I can use them for my students. I think the challenge with virtual reality technology and augmented reality technology, the new emerging technologies, much like the mobile phone when it came in first, they're still quite expensive. But as time goes on, much like the mobile phone, the prices will decrease. So these casings are actually quite reasonable, but obviously they don't have as high a quality of visuals as other casings, which are often quite expensive. So in my journey, as much as I use different technologies in summary, I always go back to my teaching philosophies, I always go back to my teaching plan, and I always go back to my students. What works for them, what doesn't work for them, what did I learn from that process, and how can I continue making their learning experience exciting, skilling them for opportunities in the fourth industrial revolution. I hope that was 50 minutes.
Any questions?
Yeah.